It's time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielson and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
Welcome to another edition of The Oil Stream with Nielson and Gazzola, brought to you by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, all of their drive-through locations, obviously as well. 12 Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, 7 of them right in Edmonton, and of course, pick up your Popeye's Special Oilers Cup today. Collect them all, Tommy.
Got to collect them all, except it's more exciting than Pokemon. It's like a hockey version of Nerd Alert. So I'm all in on that. You know me.
They should have an app though, like Pokemon, where you can go around and collect the cups. That's the next level.
Believe it or not, there's people in the city who would be all over that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I probably would.
Hello.
All right, so it's game day. It's fancy dress up day here on the stream and podcast. Tommy, as of course, I'm going for it. I'm all in on the t-shirt and suit jacket look. Looks like you're kind of coming along for the ride today. What's happening here?
Yeah. I mean, we've got some building maintenance going on, so I was like, I don't know, what am I gonna wear? I had to mess with my hair. I look like Dita from Sprockets. And I was like, I'll just throw on a long sleeve shirt with a blazer on top. And you know what, Dusty? Let's call a spade a spade. I'm copying you because I'm really coming around to this Orlovsky look thing.
I'm changing the game here at Edmonton. I'm going to roll into the game tonight like this. How do you think that goes over? Rashog and Gregor would put me in a corner and beat the hell out of me.
Yeah. Gregor actually has good style. Rashog, it's getting better, but like he's unwilling to go away from like black, brown, blue, like 1983.
Let's be honest here, though, before we get into all of our Oilers content today. You're comfortable right now, aren't you? Like, it's comfortable wearing this shirt under a suit jacket. My arms right now, they're living the good life, Tommy.
I admit nothing.
It's comfortable. I know.
Okay.
All right. Game day versus the Sens. We got a bunch of trade rumors that we can get to. One significant trade rumor that we can get to, and maybe some other thoughts on some deadline day targets. Be interesting to see if these teams make moves earlier than we would expect. But let's start with the game here. They try to make it 6 in a row, Tommy. I mean, at some point, you think they're going to lose to the Ottawa Senators, but Is it tonight? Do you see the Oilers being in a spot where they could have a little bit of a letdown?
This could be as good a time, if any, to lose to the Sens, because now Ottawa's not rolling in after losing or winning the night before in Calgary. They've had a day to rest, a day to practice, recuperate, and they're playing better hockey. And so, Dusty, I think that if Ottawa continues to be feisty and a hard loss like they were the other night, then I think there's a chance that they give the Oilers a run for their money again. I'm expecting the same type of game. And yeah, Edmonton could very well lose one of these next two. You know, I don't think it will happen, but they could lose at least one of them, maybe both. Ottawa's playing better hockey, and you have to be on your toes against them. And to beat a team 6 times in a row is tough to do. 7, 8, 9, if it happens, is pretty damn hard to do. But Edmonton's been rolling and riding hot against the Sens this season. But at some point, you got to think logically, the tide turns for at least one of these.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, but if you could wrap up all 18 points against the Ottawa Senators, you're going to the playoffs. Like, if you sweep any team in an 8 or 9 game set, it's going to go a long, long way, especially because they've beaten, have they beaten everybody else? They must have a win probably against almost everybody else so far, right?
They've pretty much beaten everyone else, yeah.
Yeah,
so that would be
off
huge.
The top of our head. That would be big. It would be nice advantage there. As far as lineup notes for tonight go, Mike Smith between the pipes, one change on the blue line and one change up front, Tommy?
Yeah, it looks like William Lagesson's good to go. He'll slot in, or we're anticipating he slots in for Caleb Jones, unless Dave Tippett decides to go 11-7, but I don't think that's likely. And my best guess, Dusty, is we see a Patrick Russell reinserted into the lineup on the right side with Kyle Turris on the COVID list all of a sudden. I'm guessing Chason moves up. They bring in Patrick Russell, and he plays, his limited 4th line minutes with some PK time, and they go from there. And I'm curious to see how Lagesson looks after missing a couple of weeks of action with what looked like a wrist injury.
He was trending in the right direction, though, wasn't he? Like, he seemed nothing special in any way, really, but pretty reliable.
He was. And I think part of that, too, had to do with him being paired up with Adam Larson, which I'm not sure if that's going to be the case tonight. Maybe Chris Russell and Larson stay together, or maybe we see Lagesson back with Larson, Chris Russell with Bear, and maybe that brings some harmony, and you get Lagesson back into the rhythm with Larson. Either way, they'll be tested. There's going to be times where I'm sure they'll look shaky. Lagesson maybe shaking off the rust, especially, but let's see how it goes. Lagesson's been good. Meat and potatoes all season long. Didn't really hurt you when he's out there, and seems to be, at least in his last bit of games, he would do more to help than to hurt you. So let's see if he can continue or pick up where he left off. I know it's tough to do when you come back from injury and miss a bunch of time, but it's on the player now when he gets the opportunity.
Is this a guy that you think, because I was talking about some deadline day targets, and I kind of circled around top 4 left shot D, even on a rental, to kind of come in and solidify a second pair with Adam Larson. Do you think Lagesson's capable of being that guy? Like, could we get to a point here where you don't need anything overly special from a Lagesson-Larson pair? And I know, moving the puck might not be, a great strength of that pair. But Larson's been playing great, by the way, right now. But do you think Lagesson is capable of doing that? Or would you agree that that would be one of the more bigger needs for this team prior to the deadline?
This season, to me, the thing that stood out is it's a lot of win from within. And with us kind of anticipating the deadline being a dud, maybe it is more of an emphasis on breathing confidence into the guys that you have in-house and relying on them, and less so trying to go and get somebody at the deadline. If this was a regular year and we were rolling into the stretch drive and approaching the trade deadline with this crop of defense, I would say, okay, go find a veteran left shot guy that's been around for a while and is on a fledgling team that isn't going anywhere, and try to pluck him for the stretch drive. But this year, with everything that's gone on and how everything works with the quarantine still, I'm starting to think that we're leaning towards you're probably just going to stick with what you got unless there's some great deal out there that you need to go after.
All right, well, that brings us to the Eric Staal discussion. Pierre LeBrun saying that there have been some internal discussions on Eric Staal of possibly being a third line center, a guy that can play the wing, a guy that comes in with a lot of experience. I was surprised me a little bit just because I'm just not too sure how many teams. I know Columbus and Winnipeg have already done it, but I'm not too sure how many teams are going to pull the trigger on a move for somebody south of the border. Now, the Oilers aren't getting killed by their bottom 6 centers right now, right? So they could have some time to put a guy in quarantine if they deem it necessary, with the way Jujhar Khaira is playing, and Gaetan Haas can spell you a little bit. Tommy, is this something you think the Oilers are seriously looking at, or do you think they're spitballing and it somehow got out to Pierre LeBrun?
I feel like they would seriously look at it. I mean, here's a guy that can still contribute at 36 years old, and he had a monster season a couple of years ago in Mini, and he's still on a really bad Buffalo team. He's doing okay. So if there's an opportunity there, and like LeBrun said, dollars in, dollars out, and you can line that up, I think you could bolster your bottom 6. I think you could bolster your team overall. And I like the thought of him coming in and maybe being a veteran presence and the ability to impart some wisdom on some guys. And we look at what happened with the Maple Leafs last week, how they schooled the Oilers for 3 straight games. And it seems like a skilled team like the Leafs, with some superstar up-and-coming players that are relatively young, although they've been in the league for a while, have benefited from having guys like Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton, and Jason Spezza around. Yeah. And maybe that blueprint could work in this scenario for the Oilers. I know the Oilers have Mike Smith. I know they have James Neal. I know Alex Chason was on the Cup-winning Washington Capitals team, but I think a guy like Eric Staal, who's a 1,000-point player over the course of his career, would just boost that even more. And the fact that he can contribute on the ice in limited minutes, that's pretty important. So that's one I think is worth pursuing. And why wouldn't the Oilers try to go after it and factor in the quarantine time? Because maybe there is a self-imposed deadline for the Canadian teams if they want to deal with American teams.
Yeah, the Staal one, I think I'm glad you brought up the Thornton conversation, because when the Leafs brought him in, I just looked at it and go, oh, okay, well, how's this guy really going to make an impact? He can't get around the ice very much anymore. But you look at just the overall experience of his career so far and how few guys on that Toronto team have that. You can even have anybody else in the room to talk about those types of scenarios with. So I'm not going to say he comes in and gets locked in somehow on the left side beside McDavid like Thornton is with Matthews and Marner when healthy, but I do think that's very underrated for the team, and it surprised me. I mean, Thornton and his impact on the Leafs has surpassed what I thought. So from a Staal perspective, do you think there'd be a lot of teams that would be reaching out to the Sabres about Staal, or do you think the Oilers are in a unique situation where he brings a lot on and off the ice and it's something they're lacking?
I think there would be a few teams that would be checking in on Staal. I mean, it depends which teams can identify him as a must-have. And a guy like that, Dusty, he's a hot commodity. I think there's probably at least a handful of teams that are like, hey, we could get Eric Staal in here at a reasonable rate for the rest of the season. If we can make the wiggle room to have him join our team, he could be a boon for a potential cup run or a deep playoff run for any respectable team. And I mean, he could choose his destination. He has that control, and he can kibosh deals. And that's what you get when you've been around for so long. You won a Stanley Cup, you've been a captain, and you've been a hell of a player for 15 years. So I think that there would be some demand for him. Probably has to be the right deal for the Buffalo Sabres, although they're in such a point of turmoil that at this point, maybe they're just ready to sell off the farm and rebuild. It's unbelievable how bad things are getting in Buffalo, where you're just like, wow, what next? And every day something new seems to come out of there.
Have to, like you said, move money out the other way. Tourist seems like a place you could start if Buffalo is willing to take another year at half the cost this year, but then you'd need them to eat half the cost of Staal's contract the rest of the way. So essentially, I mean, if they're going to still have to be paying 3.25 one way or the other, and they have to have another year of Kyle Turris, which we can talk about being a negative or a positive thing depending on where organizations are at, what would you be willing to put on top of Kyle Turris to get Eric Staal?
Oh boy, for a run like that, I don't know, 4th round pick. Does that sound reasonable?
I think you might need a third. It might have to be a third.
Yeah. Hey, that's why you negotiate and barter. So
yeah, we just did it.
We'll see. We just did it. Yeah, basically, there we go. I mean, yeah, something like that to sweeten it up a little bit, give some incentive to the Sabres to do it. Something like that, I think, is reasonable. I'm sure. I was kind of musing out loud on your show today about James Neal. I'm like, boy, that'd be a good contract to get rid of. Although I still think that there's some sort of player in James Neal. COVID has messed him up, and lingering effects and all of that. So this is a guy that still scored 19 goals in 55 games last year. I think he's got more to give, although it's been rough sledding for him this year. But yeah, Turris and something, and you get them to eat some of the contract coming back the other way. And then the other thing too with the Sabres, Dusty, is like, how much longer is Taylor Hall going to even be a Sabre? How much longer might Jack Eichel be a Sabre? Like, it's getting crazy with all this stuff, and like the Jeff Skinner stuff the last couple of weeks, and Ralph Kruger being on the hot seat, and Kevin Adams saying that they're evaluating everything in the organization. Buffalo's a wild card. It's crazy. It's going to be crazy to watch. It almost feels like the Oilers 6 years ago.
I think there might be some nastier ways to describe them than wild card.
I may suggest
shit show. They're a shit show. I think that's okay. You can, when you're wearing a nice jacket like this, Tommy, you can say things like that. It's just a rule. That's how it works.
Okay.
The thing with, so let's say, and this year's picks are essentially out of play. I mean, they have no second, they have no third. You're obviously not moving a first in a deal like this. So then and a fourth's not going to get it done. So then you have to look to next year. And, if a third rounder, I don't know if a third rounder would do it, because if you're from an Oilers perspective, I would definitely part with a third rounder and Turris to get my hands on Eric Staal, because what it also provides you with, Tommy, is an extra roster spot next year, because Kyle Turris and that $1.6 million is off the books next year as well. Right now, if you polled, I'm not going to say management, but if you polled fans, they would say, ooh, boy, we don't want 1.6 million for Kyle Turris next year. So you'd be doing yourself a favor next year as well, which is why a third, see you later. I mean, I'd probably pull the trigger on that one, but I wonder, I'm guaranteed Buffalo right now, if there is any conversation going on, Buffalo right now is saying, we're going to take that 22 second rounder from you and a player. And that's a little steep.
Yeah, that one I'm not too sure about.
But it does get rid of Turris. It does get rid of Turris next year, which could be valuable for you. That's another 1.6 mil to work with next year.
That's true.
So
I think at this point, it's safe to say, too, you'd rather probably look at bringing back Alex Chason, especially if you don't have Kyle Turris there and that 1.6 million to pay him. If Chason wanted to stay, you could find a reasonable price for him to stick around. I'd be open to that as well. That kind of opens a bunch of different doors if you're able to do that.
Yeah, then he continues to take Puljujarvi's power play time. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of. Not sure I'm a big fan of that one, Tommy. But we each have our opinion on that. Mind you, if James Neal's not, James Neal will still be around. I was gonna say if Neal's not around, then he can get that second unit time. But yeah, okay. So from a deadline day target perspective, I identified that top 4 left D spot as an ideal addition. Like, I think that could be an addition, even on a rental, that could take this team to a more confident level heading into the playoffs. There's the third line center discussion, which they're obviously having internally right now. There's the pipe dream of landing a winger to play with Connor McDavid right now as well. And then, of course, there's the goaltending, which isn't going to be addressed via trade right now. That's just not going to happen. So if you have a list of priorities here, Tommy, deadline, which one of those needs would be at the top of your list?
It would be the left shot depth defenseman to help out on that side, because Caleb Jones is still a work in progress. That's pretty evident. And Chris Russell, I know he's a veteran. He's been playing better, but I'd still want to bring in some more insurance on the left side on the blue line.
Yeah, I think that's probably the top of the list. Unless, like Larson, when Larson is going, and I asked this question, I think, on 2 guys and a goalie before the season started. And my question was, Adam Larson is the Oilers' most important defenseman this season, keep it or clip it. And a bunch of the boys clipped it because, you got Darnell Nurse, you brought in Tyson Barrie. But if Larson is as steady as he's been lately, it completely changes their blue line, Tommy. Like, all of a sudden, you've got a guy in Larson and somebody you can find and fit in on that left side that is a pair you can put out there and not have to worry. You don't have to worry about it. They can go out there. They can take some of the tough minutes away from Darnell Nurse if you need them to. When Larson's going, it's so key for this blue line.
He's their only shutdown guy on the right side, Dusty. Like, is Ethan Bear that? Not really. Not at this point in his career. Tyson Barrie, certainly not. Evan Bouchard is a rookie. He's that solid shutdown guy. And that's why on the hit show, the Nielsen show this morning, I said, well, what if you end up saying you want to keep Adam Larson and you want to keep Tyson Barrie, and then you've got 2 veteran blue liners, and then you find out what you have in Evan Bouchard. And I think Evan Bouchard will be around here for a long time and an important part of this blue line. And then that leaves you with, well, what do you do with Ethan Bear? And I'm starting to, in my mind at least, say we could see that potential situation arising at some point next year, because let's not kid ourselves. Larson's been a steady defenseman in this league for a while. Yeah, he's had a couple of rough seasons. His father passing, I think, didn't help and certainly affected his life in general. And now we're at a point where he seems to be that reliable D-man that we saw in 2016, 2017. And that's valuable. And I don't think he's going to cost you a ton.
He's only
28 years old. Barrie, I could see maybe they want to keep him around. And all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe it squeezes out other players. But who knows? That might be a situation that arises down the road. But I've already started to have those thoughts in my mind going, geez, I wonder how this all plays out, because I am liking what Evan Bouchard's bringing to the table. And without Larson in that mix on the right side, defensively, that right side isn't very strong.
If you've been watching on the live stream, thank you for the support. Subscribe to the podcast if you do not already. 2 episodes a week, straight to your phone or your mobile device or wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search the Oil Stream on all your podcasting platforms, and that is where you'll be able to find it. Tommy, Don Wheaton and White pregame show. What time you get going tonight?
5 bells, my friend. 5 bells. And last time I used
old Gregor special.
Bells. Yeah, exactly. We're cutting into the Gregor show. Last time I used 5 bells, I think it was on Gregor's show last week. Oilers team photographer, Andy Devlin, who used to be in the Canadian Navy, sent me this email about me misusing the term bells and how its true meaning comes from something else. And I was like, oh, I got to stop saying it then if I'm going to get picked apart. But then at the same time, it tells me people are listening. So you know what? I'm not perfect. I'm just me.
All right, that's going to do it for another edition of the Oil Stream. Thank you very much to Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen for sponsoring the Oil Stream 2 episodes a week. And pick up your Oilers cups if you're out and about. Get the Oilers meal. People say it's a ton of food, like an absolute ton of food. So you get the cup as well. So it's a nice bonus. Yeah, that's right. All right, Tommy, enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy that loosey-goosey feel with the shirt and the jacket. Live that good life this afternoon, buddy, and I'll see you tonight.
I admit nothing, but I look good, I think. And the Dita haircut looks good. Klaus, give me a foomph.
See you later, buddy.
It's time for another episode.